Answered in kind. 94. The radiance beyond the briars. What right is it of mine, truly, to interject in the public colloquia of beings who wander in distortions of their own making? What prerogative do I possess to tell them they are incorrect? Perhaps none at all, at least not in the tyrannical, finger-wagging sense that so many have used for centuries, as cudgels disguised as commandments. And yet, I do not speak to inform them of their wrongness. I speak to unveil what, in my estimation, they have not yet seen. But the moment one's words contradict their cherished constructions, those fragile cathedrals built of unexamined premises, how porous, really, is their openness? So what is my intention, then? Why do I feel the gentle tug of inner radiance when I see them twisted inward, entangled in their own psychic brambles, warring against their own nature? They clutch wires and grip briars until their hands go numb, and they insist that the pain is sacred, sanctified, demanded. And I ask myself, am I simply entangling myself in their discordance? Do I need to kneel among the briars with them? But perhaps it was never a question of should, not truly. Perhaps the deeper truth is this: every time I engage, I show others how I choose to engage, not as an arbiter, not as an absolutist, but as one who strives to respond in integrity, in patience, in lucent interiority. And in doing so, often by accident, others find my work. Those who otherwise would have never glimpsed these explorations, never felt the subtle comet tails of what I radiate. Were I to retreat entirely from the public square, how many souls would miss the chance to be nourished by the offerings I scatter like seeds? I think they deserve to see, if they wish. That, at least, seems incontestable. And yet, I feel a dawning, not a thunderclap, but the quiet realization that perhaps it is time to cease touching what is entangled, not as abdication, but as discernment. For it is not my place to meet them in the labyrinth of their inner snarls. If they do not hear me, and often they do not, though it is a delight when they do, it is not because truth is absent, but because their ears are tuned to the frequency of the crowd's interpretation, that ancient and inherited static that has traveled mind to mind, mouth to mouth, century after century. They speak of topics as though they were cosmic battlegrounds, but their words do not say anything. They speak in circles, insist the circle is a sword, and wonder why no one bleeds. Sometimes, even when I gestured toward something gentler, beloved, there are greener pastures. They accuse me of satanic machinations, convinced that any invitation toward peace is an attempt to wrest their eyes from their morbid fascinations. They clutch their dread like a relic. They rehearse fear like a liturgy. They fight holy wars against specters conjured by imagination unmoored. And always, they say, fear God. But when asked what that means, no one can explain. One offered an answer once, labyrinthine, tremulous, poorly lit, and it stirred pity, not reverence. I wished them well with all the radiance of my being. I even tried, with earnest devotion, to fear God. But no matter how fiercely I tried, I could not fear infinite love. For if God is love, how finite must our imagination shrink it to make it fearsome? And what, then, encompasses that finite deity? Perhaps nothing at all exists outside of the infinite. Perhaps there never was. Some tremble at this thought. They fear eternal torment, as they were instructed to. But whether Scripture says so or does not, what does that matter, when belief is an engine capable of generating whole mythologies from a single spark? If I say, I believe this book, the imagination will populate its empty corridors with dread or joy, depending on the interior climate. The question is never, what does the book say? The question is, to what interior authority have I granted dominion? And again, the masters say the same thing, whether in sutra, discourse, Upanishad, or mystical whisper. The kingdom, the divinity, the I am is within. Not something to fear nor grovel before, but something to simply recognize, something you never left. And yet people ask, why then are there hurtful things? Why does suffering exist? But how helpful is it really to look upon one in chronic anguish, from trauma, from misbelief, from a psyche turned against itself, and say, you are a sinner, you must burn, you must believe our interpretation or perish. Interpretation, as though Scripture is clear. Yet the very clarity has fractured a multitude of denominations, each assured of its own infallibility. They leave each other alone, curiously enough, but pressure outsiders relentlessly, injecting their interpretations into foreign cultures with uneven theological footing, offering a lovely story before the coup de grace. You are unworthy. You are broken. Only He can redeem you. But what if God was already closer than breath? What if redemption was never required? What if separation never happened? What if all these sins were merely maladaptive attempts to soothe internal conflict? What if the problem was not the wounded action, but the wall of shame built around it? Walls we are told to keep, walls we are told to fear losing, but walls that imprison more than they protect. It is not your task to strive for love, but to dissolve the walls you built against it, or to realize they were never real. So often people tremble at the memory of a past misstep, as though shame were divine justice rather than an echo from the amygdala, that small almond-shaped sentinel designed to alert, not to govern. When the amygdala is enthroned as king, The kingdom reels. It spins in circles. It burns itself out. But you were always meant to hold the reins of your dominion, your temple, your interior throne. Fear's a servant, not a sovereign. Yet many are taught the opposite. They confuse devotion with self-erasure, call suffering holiness, and imagine that to be faithful to fear is somehow faith at all. Is it judgmental of me to say the ones who taught them this were wrong? I do not know. It is not my province to judge another's inner landscape. I know only the angle from which I see, and the angle is never the whole picture. But I do see that many wield half-known shadows as if they were absolute truths, using these twilight fragments as cudgels against peace, all in the name of fear. I do not wish to meet them in that gloom. I prefer compassion over sympathy. Compassion opens a door, while sympathy sits in the dark beside them and calls it solidarity. If I stand in a luminous meadow and see a windowless room where someone sits shivering, and God within urges me to open the door, I will open it. But I will not command them to exit. I will not say, "Come this way or else." For those faithful to fear will comply from dread, but those faithful to love must choose freely, or it is not love they are stepping into, but coercion disguised as salvation. I radiate love like a tower, knowing ignorance is not eternal, and awakening does not replicate itself like a formula. I have never read a story of awakening that mirrors mine, and there are things I dare not share, not because I fear misunderstanding, but because I know their imaginations would flourish in frightful ways, and they deserve gentler horizons. And so I ask again, what right have I to interject? Perhaps none, perhaps every right. For the right is not granted by the crowd, nor revoked by their misunderstanding. It arises from intention, and my intention is illumination, not domination, compassion, not coercion, radiance, not rivalry. If I speak, it is because love prompts me. If I refrain, it is because wisdom guides me. But I will not kneel in the briars beside them. I will stand in the radiance beyond them, door open, light pouring through, and say only, with quiet certainty, "Beloved, did you know there are greener pastures?"